In July 1519, on the coast of Mexico, Hernán Cortés did something that looked insane. He destroyed the very ships that had brought him there. 11 Spanish vessels sat near the shore of Veracruz. Behind them was Cuba, safety, food, orders, and the possibility of going home. In front of them was an unknown land, hostile cities, tropical heat, and the most powerful empire in Mesoamerica. Cortés looked at that choice and removed one half of it. The legend says he burned the ships. The truth was colder. Most historians believe he had them stripped, disabled, and sunk. But for the men watching from the beach, the difference did not matter. The message was the same. There would be no retreat. To understand why he did it, you have to go back a few months, before Cortés became the man history remembers. At the start of 1519, he was not a king. He was not even supposed to become the conqueror of Mexico. He was a Spanish commander from Cuba, leading an expedition that had already become politically dangerous before it even touched land. The governor of Cuba, Diego Velázquez, had backed the mission. But then he began to fear Cortés, and he had reason to. Cortés was ambitious, popular with his men, and far too willing to act on his own. When Velázquez tried to stop the expedition, Cortés sailed anyway. That meant, from the beginning, his greatest enemy was not only the Aztec Empire ahead of him, it was also Spain behind him. If his men returned to Cuba, Cortés could be arrested. If they gave up, he was finished. If they mutinied, the entire expedition would collapse before it reached the interior, and that was already starting to happen. The men had crossed the sea, expecting wealth. What they found was uncertainty. The Mexican coast was unfamiliar. Supplies were limited. The climate was brutal. Rumors spread about huge inland cities, armies, rituals, gold, and a ruler named Moctezuma who commanded a world far larger than anything they had faced. For ordinary soldiers, the logic was simple. Take what you can, survive, return to Cuba. For Cortés, that logic was death. So he began by changing the rules. At Veracruz, he founded a town. That sounds small, almost administrative, but it was a legal weapon. By creating a Spanish settlement with its own council, Cortés could claim he was no longer acting under the governor of Cuba. He was acting directly in the name of the Spanish crown. In other words, he tried to cut Velázquez out of the chain of command. But legal tricks could not solve fear. A town charter could not stop hungry soldiers from whispering at night. It could not stop loyalists of Velázquez from planning to seize a ship and sail back. It could not stop men from looking at the ocean and seeing escape. And that was the real problem. As long as the ships existed, Cortés did not command an army. He commanded a group of men with an exit. So he took the exit away. The ships were inspected. Some were declared unfit. Their useful parts were removed. Anchors, sails, ropes, metal fittings, anything valuable was stripped out. Then the hulls were sunk or wrecked along the coast. It was not a moment of wild rage. It was a calculation. Cortés was not destroying transport. He was destroying doubt, because once the ships were gone, every man understood the new reality. No one could sail back to Cuba. No one could quietly abandon the march. No one could wait for someone else to decide. From that point on, survival no longer meant retreating. Survival meant moving forward. But this is where the story becomes even sharper. Cortés did not destroy the ships because he had a large army. He did it because he had a small one. He had roughly 500 Spanish soldiers in a land of millions. He had horses, steel weapons, firearms, and cannons, but not enough men to simply crush an empire by force. If he marched alone into the Mexican interior, he would be swallowed. So his real strategy was not just military, it was political. The Aztec Empire was powerful, but it was not loved by everyone under its reach. Many cities paid tribute to Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital. Tribute meant goods, labor, captives, and humiliation. To those cities, Cortés was not simply an invader. He was also a possible weapon. That was the opening. Cortés needed allies. He needed interpreters. He needed local knowledge. He needed enemies of the Aztecs to believe that he would not disappear the moment things became hard. And the destroyed fleet sent that message better than any speech. The Spaniards were not raiders passing through. They were trapped in the same future as their allies. That changed everything. When Cortés moved inland, he fought, negotiated, threatened, promised, and adapted. Some groups resisted him. Others joined him. The most important were the Tlaxcalans, fierce enemies of the Aztecs. Without them and other indigenous allies, Cortés had no realistic path to Tenochtitlan. And now his men had no realistic path back to the sea. The march became a machine powered by fear, hunger, greed, and necessity. Every step forward made return harder. Every alliance made the expedition larger. Every victory made the impossible feel slightly less impossible. Then came the sight that must have frozen them. Tenochtitlan, a city built on a lake, causeways stretching across the water, temples rising above the horizon, markets full of people, canals, palaces, warriors, and wealth beyond anything the Spaniards had seen in the Caribbean. This was not a village to be raided. This was an empire, and Cortés had walked his men into its heart with no fleet waiting behind them. That is why the destruction of the ships matters. Not because it magically conquered the Aztecs. It did not. The conquest would still take alliances, disease, betrayal, siege warfare, and enormous violence. But on the beach at Veracruz, Cortés changed the psychology of the expedition. He made retreat impossible before victory was even imaginable. Most commanders try to keep options open. Cortés closed his most important option with his own hands. And once the ships were gone, every soldier understood the same cold truth. They were no longer men on an expedition. They were men who had to win.